Hey guys, what are we going to talk about today?
I'm guessing something fun. We are Harlots of Spook Talk, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Today we're going to talk about some necrophilia.
Oh my god.
That's a first.
I know. I don't think I've ever heard anybody talk about that.
Yeah,
I
we'll be the
haven't
first.
either.
There's always a
Only on
first time.
Harlots.
hmm
Oh, yeah.
Well, welcome to our live and welcome, brave souls, to another spine-tingling episode of Harlots of Spook Talk. We are your hosts, and I'm LD Pteloma, the ever-curious seeker of the supernatural.
And I'm Karli, your guide through the haunted corridors of history and personal encounters.
And I'm La Monyeka, here to unveil the spine-tingling tales that lurk in the shadows of our world.
Today, we're diving deep in the realm that many fear, but few truly understand. Mortuaries. These solemn places, often shrouded in misery, mystery, and dread, hold secrets that can chill even the bravest hearts.
That's right, we're exploring the haunting tale of a family who unknowingly moved into a mortuary in Connecticut. Imagine discovering that your new home is not just a house, but a resting place for souls long departed. What eerie encounters awaited them?
And I'll be sharing various experiences from people who have faced the inexplicable within these hollowed walls, from ghostly apparitions to unsettling whispers in the night. You won't want to miss these chilling accounts.
Plus, we'll be featuring some spine-tingling videos sent by our listeners, real-life encounters that will make you question what lurks just beyond our sight.
So grab your sage and prepare for a journey into the unknown.
And remember, if you have an episode or a episode request or a ghostly story that you want us to share or want to share with us, don't hesitate to reach out at us at harlotsofspooktalk@gmail.com. Again, harlotsofspooktalk@gmail.com.
Now, dim the lights and settle in as we embark on this haunting adventure together. Welcome to Harlots of Spook Talk, where every whisper tells a story and every shadow hides a secret. Bum, bum, bum. Okay, so this is going to be a very interesting episode. I'm actually really excited. I'm going to share this out. You were talking about Connecticut hauntings, which is actually pretty popular. I do see the comments in here. We are on a new platform, so it's just taking me a minute to figure out where's what. Jesse says, "Hey, ladies, I finally made it." But,
Hello.
yeah, so La Monyeka is talking about haunted Connecticut, and she can kind of go into explain.
Yeah, so we of course we've all had for those of us who are scary movie gurus and just, loving hauntings and like that, we had a movie come out called The Haunting in Connecticut. Now that was actually based on a true story. In 1986, I want to say I don't want to butcher this name, but the Snedeker family moved into a new home in Southernton, Connecticut. But 2 years later, the family would leave the house telling stories of shocking, crazy paranormal activity. Now the house to the outside it looked very nice, and with the movie always of course can be more extreme, but the actual events were actually really extreme. So I think this is one of those movies that kind of hit on the mark too. I feel like sometimes when you read a book, it does you better justice than the movie does, and in this situation, it would definitely was it met its requirements. So let's see. The true story of the haunting in Connecticut began in 1986 when the Snedeker family moved into a historical home at 208. I think it was Meriden Avenue, is what it was. And they were kind of like desperately just looking for a house to rent in the area so that their son Philip could receive treatment for his Hodgkin's lymphoma. I always get that when my tongue twists, but he had lymphoma, and the hospital that they were going to was nearby. It was the Yukon Hospital where he was getting his treatments. And so they kind of were looking for a house, but they were like in desperate need of it because they had been traveling for so long. So they were like, okay, let's find a house that's close to this hospital. And it just so happened that the house on Meriden Avenue seemed like the perfect house and the perfect fit for their family. So they rushed to move in. Um, they were not told anything about the home other than that it was available. And what seemed like a lucky find quickly turned into a nightmare once his family began to experience paranormal activity. They reported seeing and hearing unknown forces, being attacked in their sleep, and even experiencing violent personality changes. In the story that's inspired by the Hollywood horror film, like there's a lot of um, different encounters, but spoken from the people inside the house, and they were likely okay. So they were what you would consider like a middle class family, American family. They were a family. Let me see. I think I have all their names. Carmen Reed and her husband Alan Snedeker, and their four children. It was Philip, Bradley, Alan Jr., and Jennifer, Carmen's niece. So let me see. Jennifer was Carmen's niece. Yeah, and Tammy also lived with the family. Okay, hold on. Let me make sure I say this right. Philip, Bradley, Alan Jr., and Jennifer, Carmen's niece. Tammy also lived with the family. At a young age, Philip was diagnosed with Hodgkin's disease. Hold on, let me say this
Oh
right.
yeah, I've
Hod
heard of that.
Yeah.
Hodgkin's lymphoma. Sorry, a type of cancer that affects the bodily lymphatic system. Because of Philip's diagnosis, the family had to travel long distance from their home to go to that hospital, the Yukon hospital, for the treatment. So eventually, the family felt like it would be better to be closer to the hospital. Of course, they found the house, and the thing is, the long rides were kind of what Philip would explain to be like it was going to get the treatment, and then the long drive home was kind of like him sick and painful in a car ride. It's such a long car ride. So they began to find the home. They found a large enough house that would fit their family. That was the 208 Meriden Avenue house that we talk about here. It was a 5 bedroom, 2 bath, and the home definitely provided lots of space for them. And so in June, I want to say June 30th, 1986, the Snedeker family signed the lease and moved into the home. Now, like I said, this was kind of one of those things where they were kind of in a hurry to find something. They found it. It was big enough. It was like, oh, it was just like a lucky shot. And then the moving process was pretty, smooth. The children picked their own bedrooms with minimal arguments, and the family loaded their belongings into the house pretty smoothly. There was no issues then.
Yeah.
Everything seemed normal until Carmen made a disturbing discovery in the home's basement. Laying among dusty boxes and old furniture, old just old items that were there already. The family had said that they had seen in the basement had like embalming equipment and other materials necessary to run a mortuary. And so it kind of, I guess you could say it kind of spooked them a little, just because they were wondering like, why does it look like a funeral parlor may
Yeah.
have been here? You know what I'm saying? Mind you, they've already started to move in and everything. When they toured the home, Carmen said that she was unable to enter the basement because of renovations, and they had blocked the doorway with materials. So when she originally went to look at the house, the door to the basement was blocked off, so they couldn't see anything. But because there was a little bit of renovating going on, so that door was blocked. They just told him, "Oh, there's a basement." They didn't tell him
Yeah.
what was in the basement. So once they got into the house and they found all that stuff, the embalming and all those things, she did later on, Carmen, the mom, actually later confirmed that the house was a funeral home, by contacting the home owner. Daryl Kern was his name. Kern started that property. He stated that it was at one time called the Hollins Funeral Home, and had been operate in operations for decades. Though he claimed he told the family about this before they moved in, I mean, come on, guys. Like, don't you think that she would have
Yeah.
remembered that? He
I
states
know.
after she moved in and finds what's in the basement that was blocked off from renovations, he claims that he told her that it had been a funeral home before. To her surprise, I'm naturally just going to assume that she was surprised then, because I would have been if I had to go and ask. You know what I'm saying? Because she
Right.
goes to the basement, they find all this stuff. She asks, then he tells her it was a
That should be in the paperwork when you
mortuary.
buy the house, you know?
Oh,
I feel
friend.
like that should be a law.
That is a
If
Yeah.
this
law.
was a mortuary
Like,
report, I wish I would have knew.
well,
Especially
if
since they were renters. They were renters of the
Mhm.
property.
the thing
Yeah,
with like that,
exactly.
it's like a no ask, don't tell. But
Mhm.
I mean, if you do ask, they have to tell you if someone died there, you know? So wouldn't like
Some states, not
a
all
more
states.
Yeah, in
well,
Texas, I don't know if they do in Texas because my dad moved into a house. He didn't say any, they didn't tell him anything, and then I found a girl staring at me one morning as a ghost, and then I asked him, and he asked the owner, and then the owner told him. So yeah, that one wasn't fun at all.
oh wow.
Now,
You would
okay, let me
think.
get back to this before we forget.
Okay.
I'll go off on that one. I
So let
remember that
me
one. It was scary.
yeah, I can upload the pictures as we
All
go
right,
too.
let's see. The disturbing facts that Carmen. Okay, so after finding this disturbing fact out, she it didn't. But after finding this out, like it didn't really prevent Carmen's son Philip and Bradley from still claiming the basement as their own bedroom. As the oldest Snedeker kid, Philip and Bradley wanted a private space for their own. You know, they're bigger boys. They wanted their own, their own area. So the basement was spacious enough to compare compared to their smaller rooms in the upper floors. Excuse me. Now, Philip and Bradley reported sleeping in casket display room down the hall from the embalming room. And in addition to the mortuary equipment, the Sneedekers also found images and of the deceased people on property. According to them, they found many toe tags and head tags. There were
Mm.
personal items from people who had been previously deceased. So, I mean, I guess as teenage boys, they're like, they're not thinking about the bigger picture. They're just like, oh, look what we're finding. Oh my God, look at this stuff. It's from the mortuary. Not really paying attention to those are pretty like horrific things. You know what I mean? The most horrifying aspect of the true story of this haunting of Connecticut, it dealt with the intense violence interactions that the Snedeker family had to deal with all the paranormal activity. Let's see. In the very first night, I think it was the night that the family moved in, the paranormal activity actually started to target Philip more than any other family members. Carmen says that it says my son started seeing a young man with long black hair down the hallway to his long black hair all the way to his hips. She also stated that he would talk to my son every day. Sometimes he would threaten him. Other times this male voice would stand there and just say his name, which was enough to scare him. So these are things that I'm assuming her son would tell her that was going on in the moments, and this is what she's explaining. It says, however, the spooky happening slowly spread to the other family members and escalated really intensely. She also claimed that while mopping the floor, while Carmen actually was mopping the floor, the water turned into blood and gave off um, a really distinct smell reminiscing of like rotting flesh. So one time she's mopping the house and all of a sudden it looks like blood and she gets this really disgusting smell of like old dead flesh. The way she explains it is she says the mop water was blood red. I mean deep, deep red. It made my skin crawl. I started getting nervous that I was ruining my floor. And this was I'm quoting her from her documentary that they did in 2002. The most shocking claim from Carmen and Alan that the unknown paranormal forces had raped and sodomized them. While the unknown force physically tormented the adults in the family, they were also seemed to be taking a deeper interest in Philip more than even before. And the Sneedekers started to worry when Philip's personality began to change. He became very irritable, reckless, often inflicting like very hard, cruel punishment towards his siblings, like being very rude and very like forceful and fighting with his siblings. And mind you, he's the older one, so of course he's always going to be stronger, but like they really started to see this take a toll on him in his personality. On one occasion, Philip placed Bradley on a gurney and spun him around until the younger boy begged him to stop. Also, uh, he also locked his brother in a chest and walked away, just to leave him there. The worst incident came up when Philip attacked his cousin Tammy, and she was forced to spend 45 days in the hospital. Doctors eventually diagnosed Philip with schizophrenia after he told them about the entities he had seen regularly. They noted that the medication that he was on to treat his cancer could not have given him hallucinations or triggered any type of schizophrenia illnesses. The Snedeker family also decided that it was best to send Philip to live with relatives. And reportedly, Philip stopped hearing voices and seeing spirits once he was out of the house. With such a strong indication of the paranormal activity, the Snedeker family contacted Ed and Lorraine Warren, which were very well known, which we all know in that world, to be paranormal investigators, as well as a priest to do an exorcism on the house. Now, mind you, he's already living with relatives, and there's these things that are still going on. But while he's living with the relatives, he's not having any type of issues there. So, and they're still in the house. Paranormal experiences are still going on. They're still being tortured, like we talked about them being sodomized in their sleep, the parents, and things like that. It says on September 6, 1988, the priest performed an exorcism of the house, and the family reported that the paranormal activity suddenly just disappeared. Later that year, they moved out of the house and never returned, thus marking the end of what they would consider to be the true haunting in Connecticut of what happened to their family. So, we hear about things going on sometimes in these haunted places, but this was one of those mortuaries that was made to look like a home, and oh, this is such a nice house, and then, oh, but don't worry about the basement. And then this whole family moves in, and then they start to get the same night that they move in, they start to get these crazy things going on. One kid saying this, the kids are just joking around, and then the activity starts to happen the longer that they're there. Mind you, the older brother's sick, and he's more vulnerable to, I would think he would have been more vulnerable because he's such at a face of with death right now, you know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
then to have the parents have things going on, the mom sees blood, she smells a very nasty smell, and then, of course she asks the guy, and the guy's like, oh yeah, yeah, I told you that. Like, I think I would have known if you told me that this was a mortuary, a funeral home
I
before.
think, yeah,
I mean, I have
definitely.
some pictures. Mary,
Yeah,
will you put those pictures up for me? Oh yeah, you see right here. Okay, you see right here. It tells you where the door. I mean, I guess after her telling him, she would have recognized that the doors in the back here, they're still attached to the house, to where you would pull in bodies for that purpose. So the
but if
house in the
you
front
don't
is like a nice
know,
house. It could look
what
like a
I
way
mean, if
just
you
out to
don't
the
know
side,
the
right?
look,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
if
true
you didn't know,
too.
you wouldn't know. Some of the older homes had like extra doors and stuff, so
Yeah,
I
I
Mm-hmm.
mean,
can't
I have
blame
an
her.
old house, and I didn't. I mean, I found an extra room, and I didn't even know. Like, you know what I'm saying? And same with like Jessie over here in the comments. She actually has a 100-year-old home too. She did say, I did see some of your comments. Tennessee doesn't tell anyone unless friends or family live nearby. Like, like if your house is haunted or someone dies. And then she said, yeah, but let's see, if they, she was just kind of explaining if sometimes with the realtors, they're like, well, if I tell them, they're not going to want to buy the house. But I had a realtor like that. When I was asking her, I'm like, hey, is this house haunted? She was like, I guess, went to the owner and told her, I think she wants it to be haunted. you know? And I'm like, well, not really, but I'm open, know? But yeah, she said, yeah, they will do that and we'll be able to sell the homes. Oh, yeah, that's what I just said.
Yeah, and I wonder if that's maybe why he didn't want to tell her, because he was trying to get
Mhm.
somebody into the home for the income. But my dad's experience was that, because my dad knows that I'm a very spiritual person. He is, but he never like practiced his gifts. So he
Mhm.
knew I did practice my gifts. I trained myself and things like that in spirituality. And so anytime he moves into a new house, I mean, my dad moved maybe 5 times in his life, but like anytime he moved, he always asked the person he was going to rent from, did anything happen in this house? Because I have a daughter who's very sensitive to things. And nobody had ever told him. And two of his houses for sure were very haunted. The last apartment my dad lived in, before he got his house, is the one where he asked the lady, "Does anything ever happen in this neighborhood?" You know, it was a really nice neighborhood in Georgetown, and they were like, "No, no, everything's good. You have an elementary school here. You've got, you're only a few minutes away from this, blah blah." And it was in a nice neighborhood. Okay, fine. It was a little small, like a one, two, three, four, maybe about 6 apartments. No, 12 apartments, 6 on top, 6 on bottom, just like a little. And then right next door was like a little thing of apartments with a pool next to it. And at that time, my parents had split up, so I was going to see my dad on the weekends when I could, but I was still pregnant at the time. So I remember going to spend the night for the first time at my dad's house. The first time I went to his house, I felt kind of weird. Like the house just made me feel weird. Me and my dad are best friends, so I'm like, I don't know, I just feel weird in the house. I didn't want to stay the night. And my mom came to get me, and then the next time I was like, okay, I think I'm gonna try to spend the night and see if maybe I can just deal with the irritability in the house. Well, my dad was doing laundry or something, and I was tired, so I went to lay down in the bed in his room because it was a 1 bedroom. And I just remember, like, I don't know, I feel like my heart just started beating so fast. I was getting anxiety and I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. And I just like opened my eyes and turned around, and there was like a little girl standing there. And then I looked to the side and there's a little boy standing there.
Oh hell.
And my dad's in the kitchen just folding laundry, and I'm just like, and
Dad?
I just remember being like in a awe. And my dad was always like this. He knew when something was wrong. He could feel my energy. He just slowly walked in the room and he's like, "Hey, Monica, are you okay?" And I was stuck, like, just looking straight at this little boy because I knew the little girl was right here. And I just looked at my dad and I was like, "Hey, Dad, did anything ever happen in this house?" And I guess he said my face looked pale. He said, "Are you all right for real?" I don't know. No, the lady who did the apartment managers never said nothing. I asked her, and I was like, maybe we need to ask her again. And he just gave me this look like, "What's wrong?" And then I just remember like going like this, like a blink, like trying to get, and they disappeared. They just like they disappeared. And I was like, okay, let's have a conversation. So I told my dad what I saw, and then I was like communicating with him and asking, like, I couldn't see them anymore, but I was communicating via mind, right? And I'm asking them, what are y'all doing here? How did y'all get to this house? Like, how did y'all find my dad's house? And they told me that they were killed there. And that was the last conversation I had. I literally just asked him as soon as my dad got up and sat next to me on the bed because he knew I was uncomfortable. I was like, okay, you need to ask that manager what happened. Something happened in this house. And then I was asking the ghost, the girl and the boy. I'm like, hey, are y'all still here? And I could hear them. They said, yeah, we're here, but we don't want you to be scared of us. So you can't see us. So I was like, okay, how are y'all here? How did y'all get to my dad's house? Are y'all lost? And they said, no, we died here. And I was like, okay, I'm done. I'm done. Because it's one thing to see a ghost as an adult. It's another thing to communicate with a ghost as a child. I still at that time was 16. I wasn't prepared to see children dead. And these children were not dead looking in the sense of being physically hurt. They were just pale, like if they had been preserved underwater for a long period of time. And so after I told my dad and I had talked to them, as soon as I stopped the conversation, I cried. And my dad was like, "What's wrong? Are you okay?" He hugged me, he consoled me. And I was like, I just was never prepared to be this spiritually gifted, and I'm very overwhelmed. And I'm pregnant, so I'm super overwhelmed. So then my dad tells me, um, I could sleep on the couch and he'll sleep in the living room with me. So we did, and he watched movies all night while I slept, and then he took me home to my mom. We had breakfast, and I told my mom what happened. And my mom's Catholic, so she's always really scared of things like that. So we didn't talk about it after that. Well, then my dad calls me that night, the next night. He had the lady come to his house, and he told her, I asked you if anything happened in this apartment before I moved because it's in a nice neighborhood, but what happened? Because my daughter doesn't even want to sleep here anymore. She had a really bad nightmare, and she's telling me that she keeps seeing these two little kids that are ghosts, and she thinks they may have died in the house. He said that lady's face dropped. She couldn't believe that he knew anything about two children in that house. It was taken out of every type of paperwork that anybody could have found, supposedly, is what she says. That the owner to those apartments had made that story disappear. And specifically because they weren't able to keep anybody in that apartment longer than 3 months. She confessed to my dad, we cannot keep anybody in that apartment longer than 3 months. And so the owner has requested for all paperwork about that to be disappeared, expunged, whatever they could do to get it out of there, out of anybody's way. So so my dad tells her what happens, and he says, I have a daughter. She, this is my daughter. I would like her to spend the night. She doesn't want to spend the night. And he tells her what happens. So what he tells me is that of course she gets scared at first, that she can't even believe he knows. She explains to him that 20 years ago the school was still there. The elementary school was like, it was my dad's apartments, the big apartment complex here, and the pool was right here, and then on the next street is that elementary school about 2 blocks to the left. And she said that 20 years ago, when those apartments were first built, that a man lived in that apartment and lured 2 kids walking home from school, a girl and her little brother. He kept them in that house for almost 2 weeks, and then the people around them said that they started to smell a very foul smell in that apartment, and they started all calling the cops, saying that the smell was overwhelming. They couldn't stand it. They were wanting to move out, so the manager issued some type of situation where the cops came. They had to open it, and they found 2 dead children. He had brutally did very bad things to them, hurt them, killed them, and left them, and never came back. So they were just walking home from school. He lured them, and they never made it out of that house. But when what I saw, they weren't physically hurt. I think what he did was he drowned them and then did all those horrific things, because they said that the the medical examiner report came back that the children had looked like they had drowned. But they had assumed that they thought he drowned him in the pool, but nobody ever saw it. The cameras, anything else, and nothing, nobody ever saw anything. So they assumed that he may have drowned them in the tub and then did his business and then just left and never came back. So they cleaned the apartment out. Most of all the people around him moved, and then they redid everything, and then they tried to start over again. So years later, here comes my dad, and then here comes little old me, and they're still stuck in that house. And then I never went back. So these things are real, you know. These things actually, some things actually just never leave, or they're stuck. You know, I wasn't really um prepared at that age to do the crossing over of those types of spirits and stuff like that. But I just
Yeah.
remember how absolutely upset I was that I wish that that lady would have told my dad something so I wouldn't have had to see what had happened to those children.
Yeah.
Because
That's
people who have
horrible.
spirits like us, sometimes we don't get the luxury of not being able to see it. Sometimes when we ask, the vision is given to us to
Yeah.
explain what happened. And at that age, I was not prepared to see or to hear what I had heard. So I cut the conversation quickly because I was just mortified. But yeah, so this is a reality though. This big group of family, and this is in 1986 when they moved into that apartment. The guys from the family from Connecticut, or the family who went to the house in Connecticut.
Mhm.
1986 is what they said when they moved in, right? And it still was happening then. And then to me and my dad, it still happened later on in life too. So realtors do have a big problem with being able to sell and rent houses that are considered to be haunted or having a death or like even being a mortuary, you know? So I guess from a realtor standpoint, they're not making any money. But to somebody like us who has spiritual gifts, that's kind of a slap in our face, you know, especially if we ask you. She didn't ask, I'm assuming, because she just wanted to get a house really quickly with her family to get his treatment. But I feel like it would have been a mortuary. I would have been saying that he told her to. I would imagine that he would have wanted to tell them.
Absolutely.
He said he does, you know. He said he did. She said he didn't. I really don't think he did.
I don't know. So I know, yeah, the former pictures, that's definitely more spookier. It looks like the house is made of something else, but maybe it's just like the eeriness of it. I have some videos, but I can actually. So Karli had a couple of
Yeah.
other ones, right? So which one was
Well,
the pink house? Do you have that one?
that was yes, I do. I was gonna go on the other subject, but we can go on that one, the
Oh,
Wells house. I was
whichever
gonna
is
do the
easier.
taboo subject, kind of break it
Oh,
up a little.
yeah, go
Let's
for
do the
it.
taboo, then go for the Wells house. Okay,
Okay.
we're gonna go into a little taboo subject here that y'all probably never really heard on YouTube before. If you did, it wasn't gonna be in detail. We're gonna talk about necrophilia.
Bum, bum,
The reason we're going to talk
bum.
about this is in
Fair
funeral
subject for
homes.
some.
Now, in Ohio County, there was a man to minute heaven, you know what, with corpse while employed at the morgue. He actually, from 1976 to 1992, has said he slept with over 100 people. Now, when I
Do
say
you know
people,
who
I mean
this
corpse.
was? Do you know the name of him?
What?
Do you know the name of
Yes,
this
I
guy?
do. His name was Douglas. His DNA was discovered in 2008 on the body of Karen Range, and that's how he was caught. She was 19 when she died in 1992.
What was the name,
Her parents,
Douglas?
I'm trying to find his whole name. It just keeps saying Douglas. It was happened in Hamilton County, Ohio.
Okay.
Ohio. And the girl was 19. That he.
They found the DNA, his DNA on her. Yes. He reportedly had sex with Range and other victims where the bodies were always awaiting autopsies. So they were prior to autopsy. The county maintains prior to autopsy. It can be held accountable for actions of its employees. So the county actually went after the funeral home because they are held to a higher standard for this type of stuff. Douglas' wife then testified that she called to report her husband coming home from work smelling like sex and alcohol from the mortuary. Yeah.
Bum, bum, bum.
So I'm sorry, my husband's coming home smelling like alcohol and sex, and he works in a funeral home. I'm gonna question it. How about
Right.
y'all? Like, seriously, guys?
Right. Well, also,
I'd be like, what kind of mortuary is that? What are you doing?
if he comes home and he takes a shower like after he's been out, don't trust that. I'm just saying. We can have a whole episode about it. Signs he's cheating.
We should one night. Signs he's cheating, and number
Sign-
one is gonna be becomes home from a mortuary smelling sex and alcohol. Please leave. Like,
or signs you know he might be a murderer.
I'm sorry. It's not funny. I'm sorry, guys.
This is definitely
It is
this is
kinda
definitely
funny,
a
though.
subject that's taboo, guys. So just
We have to laugh because if we don't, we would be like
all have different
creepy.
ways of thinking.
Yeah.
What do you do
reported-
on a Saturday night? Oh, just talk about taboo things and murder and ghosts.
Yeah.
Yes.
Story.
Oh my
He
God.
said he was drunk and high on drugs when he every time he did it over 100 times. Now, if you believe that, I don't know, but that's our little taboo. Okay, so now we're gonna get into
quick question. Do we know how old he was?
I don't really say
Because
on
100
this.
times, I just want to know over how many years?
He went from 1976 to 1992.
Over 100 bucks that we know of.
Yeah, so from 1976 until 1992.
Ooh. He was like, hey, it's the weekend. How many weekends is that? You know what I'm saying? Like, hey, let me hit up that POF real quick. Or however people dated back in the 1980s.
It
like,
wasn't POF.
There was no POF there, okay? It was
like,
never
let's hit up the bar.
conversation.
You know what I mean?
That's just.
Oh my gosh.
I don't even know, but necrophilia, it's been around in mortuaries for a while. Just gonna say
it exists. It's
sick.
not something that was spoken about too often, but I feel like as a subject that isn't touched on, I think I'm grateful we touched on it because this guy did it over 100 times over a lot of years. And it was happening in the 80s. We also just talked about that girl who got caught. She was a young lady, if I'm not mistaken, anywhere from like in her early 20s to mid 20s, possibly, who just got caught not too long ago. I just happened to run across that news feed when she got arrested for it, and then admitting that she did it. So I don't think she said whether it was pre
autopsy or after
autopsy or not, but yeah, like she admitted it. She was young, very beautiful girl.
Don't get it. I don't get it. I don't get it. Do y'all get it?
I'm gonna
This
say something, and I just want y'all
Um,
not to be creeped out about it, okay?
okay, we're not gonna be
We're
creeped
not
out. But
we
But it
listen
has
and
nothing to
we
do with
don't
necrophilia.
judge.
We listen and we don't judge. Okay, no, I'm just
okay.
gonna give you an insight, okay? Because when I was a kid, I had gifts, right? We know this. I told my mom one time, like, randomly, I remember this day like it was yesterday. I remember I was like 6 or 7, and I was like, Mom, who dresses the people when they die? And her face goes, the morticians, the people who take care of the bodies. And I'm like, oh, okay. She goes, why'd you ask me that? And I was like, cause I was thinking if you die, I'd like to get you dressed. I don't want nobody to see you like that. I'd like to dress you. And she was like, oh, okay. And we never had that discussion again. Now, my dad randomly died from a blood clot to the heart at 54. He did have diabetes, but it had nothing to do with that. He was already healthy with his diabetes. So I remember asking mortuary woman, the mortician. She had just moved into that town where my dad was from, and she's the only one who had a motorcycle casket trailer that where they would take him on the motorcycle. And my dad was a biker, so we got her services, and I asked her, I would appreciate it if I could dress my father. I don't want anybody to do it anybody else. If anybody's going to dress him, it's going to be me or my brother. And my brother, I don't think my brother can do it. He's going through some things. So she's like, yeah, get him an outfit and I will assist you, or you can do it and I will just give you time. Of course, they had cameras everywhere, right? So I'm like, okay. Now, for me, this is just something that I always wanted to do, that just to remember, like, if my parents are going to die before me, I'm going to take care of them before. And I took care of my dad very well. I had to CNA with his bad circulation in his legs and the ulcers he would get in his feet, and I was his CNA. So, like, if anybody was going to take care of my dad, it was going to be me before he went to the ground. So my aunt and uncle had bought him a real nice outfit, and I was going to take it, but then my grandma wanted him to wear this, oh God, ugly Easter shirt he wore. But I was like, okay, grandma, because it's your son, I'm going to put him in this shirt. It was just a blue plaid shirt. I didn't really like it, but my dad was a very sharp dressed man, but this is what she last saw him in, so that's what she wanted him to be buried in. So I took my grandma's shirt and I went. And I asked the lady, she said, no, the lady asked me, she says, okay, let me go get him. So she puts him in a room where we get him dressed, and she asked me, are you ready? And I'm like, yeah, I was ready. I've dealt with this my whole life. I mean, my dad's dead now. It's nothing new to me. So I walk in, and I guess she just didn't know what to expect from me. And I'm like, okay. She goes, do you know how to get somebody deceased dressed? I said, no, I just naturally know how to get old people dressed. So I'm assuming I can do it. She goes, well, here, because it is a mortuary, our procedure is that we cut the middle of the shirt in the back, and we put it on each side and just tuck it in under. And I'm thinking, I mean, is it too hard just to lift my dad? Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I guess for whatever purposes that they have that technique, I was like, that's fine. So I said, is there a specific scissors? She says, yeah, I'll cut it for you. She just cuts the middle of the back shirt, and then you put it on this way and this way. And then you just like lay it flat in the back, and then you lay them down. But one thing that I did notice when I was dressing my dad is that he's very stiff and very cold because they put them in the freezers, right? And his hands were kind of stuck the way they were going to be, so his hands were like this, but like straight. So like it was easy to get his arm in, but it was a little stiff, and they are heavy. Their arms are heavy because it's dead weight. And then his when the mortuary has them before they get them dressed, they don't have them in underwear. They have them in what you would have like an adult diaper. So my dad had an adult diaper on, and I put his underwear on top of it, then took the diaper off because I was like, my dad's not going to the grave with a diaper. You
I
know what I'm
feel
saying?
like your dad is like, why is she telling everybody this? I could just feel it. Like,
I
why?
know.
And this experience I want you to know that I had, because we're talking about necrophilia. Like, I want you to know what a dead body looks like and feels like, So of course I'm always going to have my dad's integrity intact. We put his underwear on. My dad was a boxer wearer. I took his diaper off because like he's a grown man. He's not wearing a diaper. Put his pants. They did not cut his pants. You were able to put his pants on. For some reason, I guess for time purposes, they cut the shirt. Whatever. He still looked nice, But I did notice the stiffness of the body and how cold it was. So when we talk about this necrophilia and we have these conversations, I remember thinking, man, my dad's body was stiff, cold, and heavy. what the hell were these people thinking? You know what I mean? And
Right.
for 100 times. Now, pre-autopsy,
Yeah,
I'm sure they were probably not as frozen, but I mean, the rigor mortis that sets in too, like the stiffness sometimes, it just I think about that and having that experience. I just wanted to let y'all know what that's like. Like, it's it's a very empty feeling. Because when I was
it
dressing my dad,
is.
I love my dad. I dressed him. I was very conservative for him. I was very kept his integrity. And then I told the lady after I got him dressed, I was just so happy. He looked so handsome. He looked normal to me. I asked her, "Can I have a minute with my dad?" And she said, "Yeah, yeah, yeah. Take your time." And my dad and her knew each other. She grew up in that town, so she opened a mortuary later on. So they knew each other in high school. I just sat next to him for a minute, and I just took in the moment. Like, this is an empty space with an empty body, very cold, but he looks just like my dad. And I just remember like putting my hand on his heart, and I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get this through this, but I'm grateful that you look good. And I was like, I love you, Dad, and I'll see you later. And I left the room. When I left the room, where the door is, you just go like here down the hallway, and you see the where the lady is at the receptionist desk. She was bawling her eyes out. So naturally, I think she was watching in the camera,
Oh,
but she was just like, I was like,
oh,
"Are you okay?" Because I wasn't crying. I was just soaking in the moment that my dad was gone, and this was his empty vessel, and like how the experience was very like surreal for me. But the feeling that you get around a dead body is a very empty feeling because there's nothing there but a dead body laying there. You know. So when we talk about necrophilia, I think about like, man, just being around my dad's dead
It's
body was really not really a comforting feeling.
cool.
It was more like of I'm glad he's in heaven now.
well,
Because this
that's
is what we deal with later, the empty souled body, the empty vessel of it.
what I don't get. Like, there's no warmness there. There's no comfort. Maybe
Yeah,
that's what they're into. Oh, they're into that empty. And
empty
I'm
that
not going to
empty
bring up the app, but we all know this app as Talk Something. I was watching
mm,
it the other day, and this is what sparked my interest on this subject. There was a young girl talking about she went to her friend's funeral, and when everybody left, she lagged behind to have one last time with him. And everybody is like in her comments saying, "Oh, that was a good thing." I'm sitting there reading these comments, like, how dare
You're
you
talking about the
guys?
one who
Like,
was already like put into the ground and she waited for all the family to leave and then jumped in there? She jumped 6 feet
and
down where
had
they lowered the casket and then
and
decided
then
to do the biz.
and yeah, and everybody was there saying how cool. I'm like, how is this even online, and how are we as a
wait,
How is it
society
available for people to be
liking this
watching?
video?
wait, back up.
Yeah,
Hold on. I feel
Okay,
like I
so
missed a step. She did
okay.
what? She jumped down in there for what?
So this girl had a
to
very
have
like affectionate want for this man who she never knew but always had a crush on. He dies. His family has the funeral. They put him 6 feet down, and you know how after that all the family leaves to go have a dinner or they leave to meet up at somebody's house. She waited for everybody at the funeral where the funeral home was or where the cemetery was. So when they put him in the cemetery 6 feet down, usually they give you the courtesy for all the family to leave before they put the dirt on. Now, I guess there was nobody there after she waited for everybody to leave because they hadn't put the dirt on him yet. And so once all the family was gone, she jumped inside the 6 foot ground, opened the casket to get the busyness going, and then finished off and left. So it was all over that she did that, and everybody
and she
in the comments
pried that
were
casket open. She had to pry that casket. Them caskets are like kind of locked and sealed. So to get his
they're
casket,
very
she
heavy.
literally pried this casket open to get
Hmm.
to him.
Didn't know
So
him.
it
She never
was
dated him. He was just a crush, and she was just like, and he looked fine. They say that she explains that he looked fine as like he looked like himself in the casket. He was to her, he was still very like the way she said it was like he looked fine as fuck. Like if she would
and
have seen him on
people
a natural date, like woman, this man is dead.
actually
Respect
in
the
her
body.
comments like really hyping this up. Like, I'm like, I'm reading through it. I'm getting sad for the society at this point. I'm like, where's
Yeah.
humanity at? Like, don't
Hmm.
hype this up.
Right.
Don't make this a trend. Don't like, don't do
This is not
that. I'm
cute.
like, that's
This is
sick.
not something that we want continuing. Yeah.
Yeah, that was bad. So there, and there are a lot, believe it or not. Scary, right?
Wild. You know what's crazy now that I think about that? That family didn't have anybody like put the dirt on him right away. I was the last person to watch my dad get into the ground, and then everybody went to go to the parlor to back to the funeral home where they were going to have a lunch and visit with each other. I waited till he was all the way down. Everybody left. I had to wind up calling somebody to come back for me to make sure that my dad was buried. Like I watched the dirt, I watched everything to make, because like I'm a very spiritual person and I know what witches do. And my dad was a very strong person in that town of witches. Like there's a big coven there. And so I was like I waited because don't think I didn't see the witches try to come around during that funeral. So I waited till the dirt was put on, the poles were pulled out, everything. And then I was like, okay, boop, 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 somebody come get me. And in that small town, everything's 5 minutes away. So, but I remember that. I was like, I watched that damn dirt be put on him. And usually as soon as everybody leaves, it's when the cemetery puts the dirt on them. So I guess they took lunch or something while that woman was doing her thing, because usually they put the dirt on as soon as the family leaves so that the cemetery people can make sure that everything is settled.
Yeah.
Now, getting off the taboo subject, there is another house. Is the House of Wills. I'm sorry, off the necrophilia for a minute.
Yes.
This house is depicted. It's the House of Wills could probably be known as one of the strangest and perhaps scariest moments
Hey
this
guys,
person
hold on,
had
hold on,
ever
hold
had.
on. Hold on. My bed is shaking.
Shut the fuck.
Oh,
Hold
that's
on.
not good.
No. I'm not even kidding. I'm fucking shitting my fucking brains out right now. Hold on. Nobody's in my room, guys. Give me a second. I literally just turned the flash on. Give me a sec. I'm getting the fuck out of here. Hold on.
No, you're
Hold on.
good.
Remember how I told you, Mary, that my lights blink sometimes, and I have started to use a lamp?
Yeah.
I think after having this crazy conversation, like my bed is. I have a king size bed.
Okay.
I gotta get the hell out of
I was
this
trying
room.
to make you bigger, but
I'm freaked out because my bed is rocking and there's nobody in this house to move my bed. Just give me a sec. Okay, I just
you're in
want
the
to show you.
big box now.
I want to show you.
But you
Look,
did
my bed.
just
Look, that's how big my
you
bed
did
is.
just
Okay.
discuss something very personal to you and very emotional to you.
I just
Could
felt like
you
if somebody,
triggered?
I could have
It
triggered
was
what the hell
probably
was ever in my house.
your dad was
But remember,
like, "Why'd
okay,
you
so look,
tell the diaper story?"
look,
Yeah,
you see the
that's
lights right there? I literally
yeah.
don't keep those on. I keep a lamp on because those two flicker all the time, and they've been flickering for a long time. There's nothing electrical. I've had the people come and look, and so I keep them off. But like when we do our stuff, I put my little light on my computer and we do this. But
Yeah.
girl, as soon as I stopped talking and you started talking, I felt like rocking, and I was like, nobody's in this room. I have everybody locked out because they're loud. And then all of a sudden I felt like my bed was being shook. And I was like, oh no, fuck this. I'm leaving. I'm leaving. I'm like, Lord, that's my house, and I will get the hell out of here for now.
You're like, bye.
Okay. Sorry, guys. Okay, I'm going to another room just in case. Okay, sorry guys. Okay, continue.
No, you're good. Are you?
This
Are
house.
you in the?
Are you in a different room?
Okay. Yeah, I'm in my son's
This
room now.
house is also in Ohio. So we're gonna go to Cleveland now. Is this person was doing an abandoned tour of this house, and he had it all planned out the night before, but we all know how that goes. You plan something out and it does not go to order, right?
Yeah.
He was wandering around the area at night for something to do. He put it out, da da da. He was feeling stupid and reckless at this point when he got up to this funeral, abandoned. He thought, oh, this seems kind of fit. It's also the Opry Hall too at one time. But behind the building, we found a basement window. They were able to sneak inside of it. Once inside, we wandered into the halls to find stairs, made our way up to the next floor. We turned the corner after corner through dark hallways. We were soon greeted by one of the most interesting and beautiful auditoriums inside, by the way. Like I said, this house had multiple things throughout its life.
Yeah.
And it was done in Greco type of Roman style. I mean, it is breathtaking until you get to the basement with autopsy tables, just to let you all know.
Yeah.
We spent our time wandering for the next few hours, find some interesting things here and there. And, some macabre stuff like the tables downstairs. But he goes on to talk about how haunted this place really is. Like the feel is touching, the hair standing up on end, the whispering in the ear. Like it has it all. And what I don't get is why, but then I see stuff like this in this one picture. You want me to send it to you? I'm gonna
Yeah,
send
go
it.
for it.
This could explain some of the hauntings. Okay. We're gonna talk about witchcraft for a second, because that's what another thing you just hit on. It was kind of weird because I had this pulled up when you were talking about it. I'm like, what? Okay, I sent that to you.
All right,
It's sending. There we go.
Oh my goodness.
And now witchcraft was actually a skull hanging
Alright.
on the fence and back of the house. From the cable up the house, upstairs, room is the highest point of the house. We could see a light behind a closed door. Now these lights have been off forever, obviously. And it illuminated just around the edges like a light would around a closed door. But when they walked into the room, there was no lights on.
Your discretion advice.
Yes.
Hold on, let me see.
That is
there we go.
One of the things found in the fence at the back of the house. Now I'm just saying, why would this be haunted, guys? Why not?
Usually abandoned places wind up being haunted because of satanic rituals sometimes. Because there's energy there, and these witchcraft people come and they make these rituals, and it becomes a more intense energy there. But anything abandoned always has a story. I'm sure there's a reason why it's abandoned.
When you speak things into existence too, it could be easy as just like making up a story and then keep it going, and then bam, they're like, why am I here?
He did a 180 and got the hell out of there after seeing the light come through the door. When he opened the door, there was no lights. He literally said, hell with this. He got this feeling of get out now, so he ran. And this guy did a lot of abandoned homes, so it's weird that he couldn't stick this one out.
Yes.
And also he was greeted by a man holding a gun.
Oh, that's nice.
But the man wasn't really there, type of thing.
Okay.
So the first thing he worried.
The apparition was a man holding a gun.
No, what's worse, being with a man holding a shmun or a ghost man holding a shmum?
I don't know. I mean, that's kind of hard.
The fear of the unknown on whether or not his is going to work is kind of like
exactly. That's what I'm saying. I'm like, so is it loaded? Is that also is that also a spiritual shmun? Also, ghosts can't hurt you, so let us know in the comments. What do you think? Like, which one would you be more scared of?
And it's kind of cool because this house was a mortuary at one time. Well, funeral home. Then it was a playhouse, a playbill house. Like it had multiple things in this one location. I think that's pretty cool.
That pink to see it in the picture where the pink is. I would have thought that it had become some type of bed and breakfast or like a play and stay or something like that. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then to hear that it had different businesses in it. It kind of makes sense too,
And
but knowing that it was a mortuary at one time,
each piece of the decades are still in there. Like in the basement, you still have the old table. Upstairs, you still have the deco from
like leftover
the playbill. Yeah, it's like it holds its history just in them walls. So that was a weird one. I just had to bring that up because you said as soon as you said about witchcraft, I hit that on that, and I'm like. Back on that because I was on the necrophilia when I get off of that before my phone like locks in on that. It's like, oh, you're into necrophilia. Here you go,
algorithm. So like,
I'm gonna have to clear that.
Never a dull day.
Never with the Harlots.
Never. People do these like lives and they won't be talking. They'll just be chilling. Nothing wrong with that. I do that all the time. But I'm like, sometimes you get all these subjects and you're like, whoa, how deep are we going to go in the rabbit hole? And then we have Karli, necrophilia. And I'm like, that's my girl.
We had to touch on that. We were doing a funeral home. Just saying, it goes hand in hand.
And this has been a pretty good subject. I wasn't sure about this one. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I feel like Mary's wheels were spinning like, oh my God, this can go.
No, it was perfect, but I was like, it's not, I don't have anything, but I was like, I'm going to let y'all take the lead on it. And it was really good. I, however, got some videos from the Schmick Schmock. And now that I'm making up words, Schmick Schmock.
I like the Schmick Schmock. The Schmickety Schmock.
Okay, so these are just some stories. Okay, I'm going to save one for. Okay, so here's
You can
one.
still hear me, right?
Mom told me this.
Yeah, no, you're good.
It gave me
off for a
goosebumps.
second.
All right, you ready?
So my mom is a hospice nurse, and one night a few years ago she was on call, and she gets a call from one of the hospitals in town that says, "Hey, we got a patient. They just got the bad news from the doctor, and they want to be on hospice." My mom did her job. Okay, let them know I'll be there shortly. Probably take me about 10 minutes. So at the hospital was this woman. We'll call her Jane. She had just gotten told by the doctor, the bad news that she had terminal cancer and she didn't have a whole lot longer to live. So while her family was there, they elected to go on hospice for the remaining time that she had left. So after they had made the decision as a family, her kids, everybody, they left. So Jane was kind of sitting there taking it all in while she was waiting for the hospice nurse. In this moment, a woman walks in her room, and Jane's kind of looking up like, "Who the hell are you?" And this woman introduces herself and says, "Hi, my name's Betty. I'm your neighbor. I've been your neighbor for the last couple days here in the hospital. I'm just in the room down the hall. And I heard the bad news. So I just wanted to come in and say, is there anything I can do for you to let you know that it's going to be okay?" And Jane was like, "What do you mean you heard how did you hear the bad news?" And she was kind of taken aback by this. And she's talking to me and she goes, "No, I'm okay. I think I just need some time. The hospice nurse is coming. I'm going to just take some time to myself." So this woman comes through and goes, "Okay, okay, sweetie, we're in the Midwest. Okay, sweetie, if you need anything, let me know." And so instead of turning around and leaving the room, Betty turns and walks into the bathroom of Jane's room and shuts the door. And Jane was just kind of shocked, like, what is happening here? And literally, probably 60 seconds after that happened, my mom got there. She came and she knocked on the door. "Hi, I'm the hospice nurse. Do you have a minute to talk?" And Jane was kind of like, "Yeah, I guess." So my mom, she's been a nurse for a really long time. And so she sees like this hesitation on Jane's face and she can hear it in her voice. And she's like, "Is there something on your mind? Do you want to say something?" And Jane was kind of like, "So my neighbor, Betty, just came in and, was really sweet, really a nice lady, but she just went into the bathroom and she's still in there." My mom was like, "Oh, okay. How long has she been in there?" And Jane was like a minute or so, but I can't, I don't hear anything. I don't hear, what's going on. So my mom is trying to be very polite. Obviously, this is a situation where Betty doesn't need to be there. And, my mom's been in healthcare for a long time. She thought maybe Betty might have a little dementia or something. So she walks over to the bathroom door and she knocks and there's no answer. And she knocks again and she says, "Hey, I'm so-and-so, I'm with hospice. I'm going to open the door." So then she goes to open the door and there's nobody in there. So then, my mom says to Jane, "Gosh, there's nobody in here." And Jane's like, kind of wigged out. Obviously, she's like, I had a conversation with her. Like, I'm not sleeping. I'm not groggy. She was in there. And so, my mom was like, "Okay, well, let's, you just had a traumatic, thing happen. It's a lot going on. Let's kind of get going. We'll talk through this and, maybe I'll go check on Betty and maybe she slipped out at some point when you didn't see her." So they finished the paperwork because, of course, it's healthcare. There's paperwork for everything. So they finished the paperwork. My mom says, they finished chatting and my mom says, "Okay, well, I'll go check on Betty and we'll be at the end." And Jane's like, "Okay, thank you for coming." So my mom leaves and walks over to the room that Betty said she was from and she looks in and there's nobody in there. So then she walks down to the nurse's station to report off, I guess, what she had done and kind of keep in communication with the nurses. And as she's reporting to the nurses, she tells them, "Hey, Jane said Betty kind of came in her room right before I got there and I can't find her in her room now. So I just want to make sure that, if she has dementia or something, she's not lost somewhere. So if somebody could just make sure she's okay." And I'll never forget my mom's face when she told me this part. She said the nurse looks at her and goes, "What?" So my mom goes, "Betty, I just want to make sure she's okay. She was in, and recants the story." And the nurse looks at her and goes, "Betty died this morning, like 12 hours ago. Betty's not there. Betty was not in her room." And of course, my mom was shooketh by this. My mom is not a storyteller. She's not a I mean, she's a spiritual person, but she's not a big into the paranormal. So this really took her back. She was pretty freaked out by this. But yeah, that when she told me the story, like I said, I know her. She doesn't make up stories. She doesn't make this stuff up. So when she was telling me this, like, I got goosebumps. I'm like, that is creepy.
And there's their handle if you want to go back on there. Okay, so yeah, it's like wild, and I'm like,
I hear that in hospitals happens pretty often, where a patient dies and then goes to visit somebody else, and then when they speak about it, like that person had already died.
oh my
Like
goodness.
maybe like Betty's probably one of the ones where I've heard that was like just that morning, but I've heard like we talked about that one time where the security guards were training new security guards. Remember when we had that episode about how in the hospitals, the haunted hospitals, where the security guard had like a whole conversation with somebody that was a patient years ago?
Yep, and I have one from a morgue as
I used
well.
to work in a morgue for 10 years, and
Sorry.
the weirdest, scariest thing I ever saw was this one cadaver, as we call them, a body basically. It was my job to clean them up and make their faces clean the blood off, make them look presentable for their families to identify them, if there's been a major trauma. And this one cadaver, I noticed her eye was twitching, so I lifted the lid, and there was a fucking maggot in there. A live maggot, so obviously you can't have that. So I got the tweezers, I tried to get in there, but the maggot was trying to embed itself further in. Her eye was doing that, and the maggot was trying to embed itself under the eye. So I had to go and get it, and I was literally an inch away from this lady's face, like that, just trying to get this fucking maggot. All of a sudden, her mouth slowly opened like this, as wide as it can go, like that. And I was like, what the fuck? And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, she went, and I'm not kidding you, I fucking legged it out of that room. I never knew a noise like that could come from another human being, especially a fucking dead one. Legged it out, got my superior, came back, and she was normal again. The maggot was still there. We had to get the maggot out, but that's quite normal actually. But her mouth was closed and she was just lying there. My boss wouldn't believe me. She sent me home. Thought I was fucking drunk or on drugs. Never went back to work. I worked there 10 years. And I've spoken to doctors since then, and none of them believe me. They say you must have seen something else, because that is physically, biologically impossible. A dead body cannot do that. But I know exactly what I saw. It fucking haunts my dreams. I have nightmares about it. It's something that I can't ever unsee.
And that's his handle right there. But oh my gosh, like I didn't mean for it to go move so fast to transition. I'm like, oh well, we're here. But I was like,
I love that though.
oh my gosh.
That one's gonna be my nightmare tonight, guys.
You know what though?
For him working at a morgue, he had pretty good color. Most people who work at a morgue are very pale because they're never outside. Like you'd be surprised how many people that are like working a morgue actually get out. They don't, because there's so many bodies coming in.
I was like, I watched like half of them, and then I didn't watch the end. So I'm like, Betty died.
But you know what, Betty's. I think of Betty White. You know what I'm saying? But like, you know how like you would think of a Betty would be like a very sweet old lady.
Well, you remember Nana's best friend, Miss Betty. That's who I always think about. I'm like, I remember going to her funeral, and she was like, I was like looking around. I'm like, is she here? I know she's here. They're always here. They're always at the funeral. But I'm kind of like, I kind of wonder if she just was like, yeah, I don't need to be at a funeral. You know?
I think
like, there was some sign. I was sitting there like a lunatic, and I'm like, Betty, if you're here, shake the flowers.
If you can hear me, let me know you're here.
I know you're here. All dead people visit their funerals. And I'm sure she was just sitting there very calmly, like, not today, Mary.
I know you can hear me, so I'm gonna hide. FYI, guys, they do hide from us too sometimes. Sometimes when
Yes.
a apparition, a ghost, whatever you want to call them, know that you have the gift, there's just something about a sense that we have that they sense it. Sometimes they don't want to talk. Sometimes they don't want to be seen, but they just want to lag around and be around. Like they like to spy on you sometimes. Plenty of times I've had to catch some things that in my house and be like, yo, there's the door.
I have one more video if y'all have time. If not, then we can skip it.
No, let's do
No, we
it.
can watch
I
it.
haven't
One more
I
video ain't
haven't-
gonna hurt.
Do it.
I haven't really watched this all the way through. Let me get that over here. Oh my gosh, I didn't watch all of it, so I'm kind of like worried. I don't know if I could take it. My little lights were going off earlier.
Worked in a morgue before, you'll know that everyone's favorite question to ask you is if you've ever had anything paranormal happen. So today I'm gonna finally share my story of what I've experienced happening when I worked in the morgue. I want to put a disclaimer here. I don't necessarily believe in ghosts or anything. A lot of me is a scientist, and so I go by things like that, but also there's a small part of me that does, just because I think it makes the world a more interesting place. So I'm sharing this story just for funsies, and that's it. So we just called our ghost the morgue ghost. Anytime something stupid happened or any mistakes happened, we would blame it on the morgue ghost. Like if someone dropped something or something fell over, we would just say it's the morgue
Relatable.
ghost, and that was it. But I did have one time where I was working with my two other coworkers, and we were folding some laundry after just finishing a bunch of cases, and we were far away from our one sink that is an automatic. When we were focused on just folding, it was very, very quiet. We weren't saying anything. The sink just turned on randomly. And I kind of looked up and laughed, and I was like, oh, it's the morgue ghost. They're just saying hi. And as I was talking, it had shut off again. But then once I said, oh yeah, they're saying hi, it turned on again. And we all kind of looked at it, and it shut off. And then I just laughed and was like, yeah, look, they're responding to me. And then it turned on again and then shut off immediately. And my one coworker looked at me and was like, oh my God, stop saying that. Stop talking. You can't keep going with that. And I think it turned on again and then shut off right away. But that was basically it for that one day at least. Then we do have cameras that are set up around in different rooms. None of them are like in the actual autopsy suites though. So there's one camera that points in the evidence room, and while everyone is gone except for one of the death investigators, he was looking at the cameras, and he said he could have sworn that he saw someone was standing in there, and so it scared him so bad that he got up and ran to go and check in the evidence room because he thought someone was genuinely in there. And then when we got in, there was nothing there. So that was kind of a story he liked to tell people. I know a lot of investigators and other officers, if they ever had to check someone in late at night, they refused to go alone because they would always get really freaked out. Then I think some of my coworkers, when I worked there, they had a few little stories, you know, things falling and rolling when they were in a position to fall and roll in the first place. Little things like that, nothing crazy. A lot of these things probably have a very good explanation as for why it happened and when it did, but I just kind of choose to think of it as something interesting that happened, and it was fun to think about. I think for a lot of people too, just believing in ghosts or people who have stayed behind, you know, can also be reassuring in one way or another. So I thought sharing these stories, you know, was kind of fun. We never felt like really scared or anything by any of this stuff happening. It just seemed more of like a joke, basically. When it would happen, we would just kind of laugh it off. It wasn't anything super terrifying like you'd see in a movie, but at the end of the day, hopefully you guys enjoyed some of those stories. I don't know if I even have any more. I might if I think about it hard enough, and maybe I'll share them too.
I feel like this is a coping mechanism, and denial is just not over an age.
Yes, I agree. I was like,
I'm all
okay,
for science too, because I'm a very smart, intelligent person about science. But
that's what I should have talked about when we had haunted hospitals, because I had seen so many videos where like, and they shook me to, I was shooketh. You know,
the
like,
word shook. I love that. Yes, I'm going to be using it.
it was like there was like sinks, like I thought it was a children's hospital because I've seen this room on 2 videos. The second one I seen was a lady was kind of drugged up, you know, like her whole body was like in a cast almost. and the sink was turning on, and then another one with like a little girl, and they looked like the same room. I don't know if they were, but it's like, but that's a whole different haunted thing. So I know we are running out of time for tonight. We have done over an hour, and we're like really blessed to have you guys come in. We appreciate it. And if you have any stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and email Harlots of Spook Talk. If you don't, otherwise you'll PM one of us and we'll read it out for you, whichever you want.
And
All
like
right.
always,
Guys.
blessed be.